everybody. This is Steve Marchand. Thanks for watching or listening to the Steve Marchand podcast. There's always endless material in the world of New Hampshire politics, and today's no exception. Really pleased to have my friend and U.S. Senate candidate. I don't get to see that. I think you're our first U.S. Senate candidate on the podcast this cycle, Karishma Manzur. Karishma, so good to see you. How are you today?
Steve, thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to finally make it to your podcast. I've listened to almost all your podcast series episodes. So thank you for having me. And
we're getting
I'm doing
there.
Very well. And yourself? How are you?
Oh, doing great, and knocking some of the kinks out of the first episode. So this is about our 15th or 16th episode. Mm-hmm. So I think it was Malcolm Gladwell who made a career out of the Tipping Point book probably 15, 20 years ago. And he talked about, and I think the number was 3,000 hours. He said, if you can do, and I might be understating it, people need to do a certain number of thousands of hours of something at an uncanny consistency in terms of the amount of time to reach mastery of whatever it is, hockey or sewing or cook or anything. Mm-hmm. And so as this is only, I believe, the 16th episode, unless we're prepared to go for approximately 2,985 hours, this will not be mastery yet, but it's better than it was 15 episodes ago. So I'm so glad you're here today,
Love it.
Now, speaking of thousands of hours, you are a U.S. Senate candidate, and it is a small state until you get in your car.
Yes.
And I'm sure you're experiencing this. So how long have you formally been a candidate, mm-hmm. and how has the experience of running so far mm-hmm. compared to what you thought you were doing when you first jumped in?
Yeah. So I launched on August 20th. So let me see. We are thankfully a small state. So we are north to south is about a 3-hour drive. East to west is about a 3-hour drive. Steve, I know you know this, but I just want to make sure others who might be listening know this. So as a scientist, I had to figure it out what were the pros and cons of running this grassroots campaign on a shoestring budget. And so I had to look at what can we do this, because a state like California, Michigan, or New York with a large population, and also geographically large, you will have to raise a lot of money just to travel from place to place, maybe mm-hmm. even take a flight. So New Hampshire, we're very lucky in that we have a geographically small state. Again, like I said, 3 hours north to south, east to west. And we are also, we have a population of only about 1.4 million people. And another awesome part of New Hampshire is that even this tiny little state, we're divided into 221 towns and 13 cities. So there are always these little town centers or city centers or these kinds of communities. So to try to meet people, it's quite easy because you just find the community leader for that town, whether it's within the Democratic circle or just a community leader, just a regular nonpartisan community leader. So anyway, so those were all considerations as I decided to launch ahead of launching the campaign.
So sorry, yeah. I want to back up because you mentioned you're a scientist by trade.
Yes.
A medical scientist.
Yes, I have a Ph.D. in biochemistry and molecular biology, and I worked in clinical research for 20 years, mostly in neurological diseases. And I focused on epilepsy and depression for the last 10 or 15 years of that career.
Now that is, and this is a good thing, I think, in the world of politics.
Yes.
That is not the typical lead up professionally to making a jump, not just to politics, mm-hmm. to the United States Senate. Mm-hmm. So even though you announced much more recently, mm-hmm. what was the moment where you took, it must have been an unusual moment, right? At the moment where you said to yourself, this might be the right move given I've got to go from feeling a certain way and being an activist in many important ways to this really big, important change and big decision. What happened, and when did that light bulb kind of go off?
Before I answer that question, because you touched on Senate and scientists, can I just answer a little bit off topic for a second?
Of course, sure, yeah.
So I'm going to quiz you, Steve.
Yes.
In the history of the United States Senate, How many PhD scientists have we ever elected?
Uh, I don't know the number, but it's got to be so small. One.
One. It was Senator Jack Schmidt back in the 1970s. He was a geologist. He was a senator from New Mexico. And you might also know him because he was an astronaut.
Wow. Okay. Yes. Wow. Okay. So one in the entire history of the country.
In the history of the country. We have had other PhDs, like PhD in religion and other humanities. We have, of course, had MDs, but no other PhD scientist.
Now, why do you think that is?
You know, I ask myself the same question. So you see what the trend tends to be a lot of JDs, like lawyers, as well as business folks. But if you really want Congress to work, you should actually elect engineers, mathematicians, and scientists, because we are not very political. We just look at a problem and we ask ourselves, well, what are the root causes of this problem? And once we figure out the causes, then we ask, what are potential solutions to these problems? And then we say, let's implement these solutions and then check if the problem has been resolved. We're kind of, we solve problems. We are very pragmatic folks. And that is why it is very odd to look at a dysfunctional Congress and say, what's going on there? And then, of course, that opens up another story, and I will answer that in a second. But so folks out there, please, if you are coming from a technical field, engineering, mathematics, science, please consider running for different positions, whether at the state level or at the federal level, because the country needs you. So
it's a good point. I mean,
yes.
It's interesting because the thought process that you're wired to do, right? And it's drilled into you professionally, and then you implement it. Seems like one that would match really well with trying to figure out the best public policy solutions to the problems that we face as a state, or in this case, as a country. But we don't have a lot of that background necessarily. As you say, we have a lot of the lawyer background, and that probably is good for certain things, but not everything.
No. So yes.
Yeah.
So I want to. So, for example, well, actually, before I talk about the nonprofit aspect of it, you did ask how I got here. So maybe if I answered that question, then we can reach nonprofit. How's that?
Yeah.
Okay. So as I said, by career and by education, I am in the sciences. And I was a happy scientist. I loved working in clinical research, even if it was a long 12, 14-hour day. It was so gratifying because you're working on problems to help people who are, very ill. These are, when I was working in depression, these are major depression, like people who are suicidal, who might have even tried to commit suicide. So it's a very serious disorder, major depression. Anyways, so it was quite gratifying to work in the field, hoping to help people. And I just want to plug that science or clinical research or any of this kind of field, that's a service, that's a public service. No one goes into science thinking, I'm going to make a lot of money. No, you're happy if you have a mortgage, maybe a car loan. You're not going in there to make money. You're just going in there because you care, you're kind, compassionate, and you believe in public service. But several years ago, I started to become disheartened when I realized that many of the treatments I was working on would never be accessible to millions of Americans because either because they lacked insurance or because of underinsurance. See, we live in the richest country in the world. How is it possible that millions of Americans don't have access to healthcare? So this made me want to explore this question a little bit further. So I kept my paid work, but I started to move into the nonprofit sector. I was working with several different nonprofits, and some of them have become very involved. So I'm on the board of Open Democracy Action. This is an organization that was started by Granny D. Haddock. So can I just, Steve, you most probably know who Granny D is, but just...
Oh, absolutely. I met her many, many years ago.
Yes.
I think soon after she did her walk across
Yes.
America, right? So, but I know more about, but for those that maybe don't know much about
Yes.
her, yeah, talk about that.
So Granny D is a Granite Stater. She was born in Laconia, and I think I don't know when she moved to the Peterborough, Keene area, but that's where she lived the later part of her life. She was an amazing human being, tiny little lady, but with a huge heart and really able to understand the root causes of a lot of these problems. So she, at age 89 years of age, like Steve mentioned, she walked all the way from California to Washington, D.C., literally walked. And over the course of almost, I think it was under a year. So there were parts when she was in the winter months, she was like cross country skiing through parts of the country. And why she did this was to increase awareness of the fact that big money in politics is the greatest threat to our democracy. And sadly, this was even before the passage of Citizens United. Yeah. Imagine what has happened since then, the floodgate of dark money inside our election system. So I'm on the board of Open Democracy Action. So we have been working for years to try to get big money out of politics. So what we look at is who's financing campaigns, who are the donors, and what could be potentially their interest. And a lot of times what we are really interested in are the super PACs, because the super PACs are so, sometimes they're, you know who the donors are, but sometimes these are shell companies. And if you explore further, then you find another shell company, et cetera, and it kind of goes dark. You actually don't know who the donors are. This is actually a concern. It doesn't matter if you are a Republican or a Democrat or an independent. You should actually care for and want to have access to this information. You should want transparency in our campaign finance. And at the moment, it's quite opaque. So I'm also on the board of another organization called New Hampshire Ranked Choice Voting. So we don't have ranked choice voting yet in New Hampshire. Fingers crossed that we will be able to bring it one day to the state, because Maine has it, Utah has it, Alaska. It'll be great. Oh, and New York City has it, because we know this. Everyone knows about the New York City ranked choice voting now. So fingers crossed, we'll try to bring it to our state. And I used to be on the board of New Hampshire Peace Action. And that is a chapter of the National Peace Action, which is the largest grassroots peace organization. But just before I launched, I resigned from that board because 3 board memberships, 1 campaign, it's going to be too much. So
that's a lot.
That's a lot. So I have the 2 board memberships, and then I'm a candidate. So sorry, I should quickly wrap up and tell you.
Sure, that's okay.
So through the course of this nonprofit work, basically, it kind of gives you an idea. I care about campaign finance issues. I care about democracy because of the ranked choice. And I also care about peace. I mean, the war economy is just drying up our resources. It is really something we should all be concerned about. And but through the course of this work, I realized how many of our problems that we see in our society are related to big money in politics. So I did mention healthcare was an issue that was of concern to me. That's why I started to explore it. So why don't we have a universal healthcare plan that covers every single American? Big money in politics. Why do we have a minimum wage stuck at $7.25 since 2009? Big money in politics. Let's see. Why is public education underfunded? Again, the same answer. Why are unions being busted? Same answer. Big money in politics. So you see a lot of these issues comes back to that same problem. And that's why if you go to my website, you'll see big money in politics, banning big money in politics is the number one issue, because you cannot do a lot of these problems cannot be solved while that our basically hands are tied. Many of our lawmakers are answering to their donors. So can I talk a little bit about what big money in politics means?
Sure. And I will note, and we don't have to wait till the end. When folks want to check out your website, what's the URL?
It's www.karishmaforsenate.com. And my spelling of my name is Karishma. And so then it's forsenate.com.
So spelled as it sounds. And you're right. When I looked at the website and I noticed, you don't want to overread the prioritization. Sometimes it is what it is. But I did notice money and its influence, because it is all pervasive, right? Mm-hmm. No matter what issue you care about.
Yes.
follow the money,
Follow the money.
you've probably gone a long way towards figuring out why things are or are not the way they are or are not. And so it's clear. And then to hear your background, clearly this is something, I mean, there's clearly an activist thread that predates running for major office. So that may help explain what at first may seem like an unlikely direct transition from a medical scientist to U.S. Senate candidate. And certainly that is unusual. As you note, we don't have a lot of folks with that kind of background in the history of the Senate. But there's more to the story, right? There's a linkage of activism that is concurrent with your professional work that perhaps provides a little more of a easy to understand bridge to running for major office like that. But you want to talk some more. You wanted to talk some more about the big money issue and how it hits us in so many ways.
Right. So as I said, originally it was because of the healthcare crisis. And we sometimes say the healthcare system is broken, right? You've heard this term.
Sure.
It's not broken. It's working exactly as designed. Let's say it this way. The pieces of legislation that are not being passed, it's because of big money in politics. The ones, where Medicaid expansion is being impacted, ACA subsidies are being impacted. Again, these are very deliberate decisions, right? So it's not a lack of resources. We're the richest country in the world. If we have $40 billion to throw to Argentina, we're not short on cash. So it's the decisions that the lawmakers are making. They're very deliberate. And unfortunately, it's not because they care. Too many of them don't care about the people on the ground. They care about their donors. So to use the healthcare issue as an example. So we are the only developed nation that does not offer a universal healthcare plan. That's kind of problematic. And so how could we, what kind of a universal healthcare plan could we offer? So at the moment, the only one out there that has been a proper, complete, comprehensive piece of legislation that has been introduced to the Senate by Senator Sanders, and in the House by Representative Jayapal, is called Medicare for All. Yes, the term is a little off. I wish it was called Healthcare for All, but that's the way the legislation is called. So let's just work with it. So Medicare for All. So that's a universal healthcare plan that would cover every single American out there. So why doesn't it pass? Year after year, it's being introduced. Why doesn't it pass? It doesn't even get enough co-sponsors. So many Democrats don't even sign up for it because there's such interest by big pharma, for-profit hospitals, and the for-profit health insurance companies. So they pour a lot of money into our lawmakers to make sure that the system, as the status quo, is maintained, because there's so much profit being made with our current system. And Wall Street is very happy. The CEOs of these health insurance companies and the big pharma and the for-profit hospitals are very happy. So to give you an idea, when I was as we were preparing to launch, we talked to a lot of people. There were a lot of people who were working on the campaign, but we were also talking to a lot of folks who were not made to be directly part of the campaign, but we wanted to understand what their concerns were. So I am the face of the campaign, but behind me are several hundred people. This is not a vanity project. This is a project that came about from years and years of frustration by many Granite Staters. I'll get into that in a second. But just to give you an example, so one person I spoke to, her loved one had cancer, and the oncologist prescribed treatment. Her health insurance company, this loved one's health insurance company, refused the treatment. And of course, the person died. That same year, the CEO of that health insurance company made $15 million. How can they make $15 million? Because they keep denying care. It's called medical murder. And this was one story. But if you actually look at the statistics, we lose over 50,000 Americans each year because of this problem, medical murder. Our lawmakers are not thinking about 50,000 Americans, like how to save their lives, like what are they there for? Why did we elect them? So we should actually question this. So that is the impact of the for-profit healthcare model. There's so much money to be made. But I did go into the nonprofit sector to understand this problem. But in 2021, I became even more involved because, so as I mentioned, the minimum wage is stuck at 7.25 since 2009. And for folks out there, just so you know, New Hampshire is the only New England state that is stuck at the federal minimum wage. So our state minimum wage is 7.25. And we are one of 22 states that have that 7.25. So states like ours, it would be very beneficial for the federal minimum wage to increase, because then our state's minimum wage would also increase. But since 2009, it hasn't. In 2021, President Biden tried to increase the minimum wage from $7.25 to $15 an hour. So it passed the House and went to the Senate. It did not pass the Senate, but I'll quiz you again, Steve. How do you think our U.S. Senator Maggie Hassan voted for it? Yes or no?
Well, I'm going to presume, as a Democrat, yes.
And then how do you think Senator Shaheen voted for it?
I would also presume yes.
So in both cases, you're wrong. They did not vote to increase the minimum wage.
Okay, this is a good moment to ask you this. So you alluded to, you may be the face of the campaign, the actual candidate, but you describe it in terms of more movement, of a tipping point or a cultivation, a culmination of hundreds and hundreds of activists.
I don't know, hundreds and hundreds, more than 100. Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't want to put of a lot of people, who are looking to take frustration and activism and take it to the next level of electoral action. Because ultimately, I think more winning elections with folks sharing a common set of values and then seeking to enact them into legislation and get them signed into law. Ultimately, that's the activism has to become votes in the chambers of the House, the Senate, and the signature of the president in order to get to the finish line for the real change to occur in the law. So in the Democratic Party, obviously we're in a moment of a lot of transition here, a lot of debate that's increasingly public, and a wide spectrum of views. Healthcare is a really good example of this, and what to do. So why is there the fissure in the Democratic Party on what to do? I'm focusing on the doing part, not the rhetorical part, the doing part, on issues that are so critical to Americans, like what do we do about the inaccessibility, the unaffordability of quality health care? Where is the fissure? Why do we have that fissure? How do we as a party get to the other side of that fissure?
So actually, we should always, we kind of give the GOP a pass, like, oh, they don't think for themselves. They're just going to line up behind Trump. We don't even question their motives, or we don't even think of them as sentient beings sometimes, like, oh, they're just lined up. But I'm sorry, they were elected to also serve the public.
Sure.
So let's talk about every single member of Congress, whether they're independents, Democrats, or independents. So let's just talk for a second about healthcare. And we might end up taking the whole time just talking about healthcare. And so,
well, it may be the number one issue. I mean, if you connect it into the broader issue of affordability, which you have to, I mean, then it is the dominant issue on Americans' minds, or at least it's a microcosm of the thing that's keeping people up at night.
Yes. And so if we look at all the problems associated with it and why it's not working for many people, it actually is a fantastic example of other problems in our society. For example, we can talk about the SNAP benefits, we can talk about the minimum wage, housing crisis, childcare crisis, public education, underfunded public education, et cetera. So let's then focus on healthcare as an example. Okay. So let me try to say the current system. So we have the Medicare, we have the Medicaid, we have VA has its own system, the private health insurance companies, and of course we have the through ACA, people also have received private health insurance. So if you put all of the money that we're spending on healthcare in this country, whether through taxation, premiums, co-pays, whatever else we're spending. And if you put it into a box, it's about a $5 trillion box. That's what we're spending in this country. And yet, that's a huge number. So I think it comes out to about $14,500 per person. That is far greater than any other nation, any other developed nation for the per person number. It's a very good number. So wait, but millions of Americans are still not covered. So why is that? And how do we, what will Medicare for All do? So let's look at Medicare for All. So Medicare for All, if you consider that it will cover at the moment, the model is that it will cover every American out there, every person. And then you ask, how much would that cost? It'll actually cost $4.3 trillion. And you're like, wait a second. How can a system that's going to cover everyone cost less than the current system? So, and this is not my number, this is from the Congressional Budget Office. So nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. So why is it? Because the current system, that $5 trillion system, about 34% of that is going to either profit or to bureaucracy. 34%. That's a huge number just to bureaucracy. And what does that mean? So if you go to a doctor's office and you go into the front desk and you check in, the receptionist is there, then look behind that person. There's a lot of folks moving around. Those are not nurses or physicians or technicians. Those are billing specialists. They're there, even in a small 1 or 2 people provider office, there are several billing specialists. They're full-time employees, and all they are doing day in and day out is calling the insurance companies and asking for reimbursement. Even if you have a private health insurance and your doctor approves a certain treatment, it doesn't automatically get paid. They sometimes deny it. The doctor has to provide more information. And it goes back and forth. And this can take up a lot of time. So there's a lot of money being spent. And now imagine that's just a single office. Now imagine across the country, all these private small clinics. Now imagine all the hospitals. All day long, a bunch of people are arguing with another bunch of people about whether that care should be provided or not. And that is extremely expensive. So if we have Medicare for all that money is going to be saved. Second thing is, the hospitals are very, very expensive, the care that we provide. And it's unnecessarily expensive because there's a profit margin built into it. So to give you an idea, if a person goes to an ER, and I'm talking from a real life experience, the same person needed an emergency care and they were in Germany. They went to the emergency room, they received the care, they waited several hours, they were finally checked off, left. They received a bill of $350 in euros, but it translated to about $350.
Yep.
That same person had a similar emergency, went to the hospital here in New Hampshire, went to the hospital, received the care. Again, the ER physician checked them off, several hours of waiting period, and left. Very similar because both were food allergies. The bill from the United States was $5,000.
Yep.
You would consider Germany to be world-class healthcare system, right? Very similar to ours.
Sure.
$350 versus $5,000. In this person's case, they had health insurance, so it was covered by their health insurance. But what if they didn't have health insurance in the United States, which millions of Americans don't? Then they have to worry about paying off that $5,000. And that was just a short visit. What if they needed hospitalization? Think about it, 10,000, 20,000, God knows. Medical debt and dental debt is causing about 500,000 households in the United States on a given year to file for bankruptcy. It's a real problem. So when we say the for-profit hospital model, expensive hospital stays, not only is it eating into our the spending, the healthcare spending, but it's also impacting people personally who don't have that health insurance. It's really impacting them. And the other part of our current system is the cost of drugs. So drugs are too expensive. That needs to be brought down. Hospitals, for-profit hospitals are unnecessarily expensive. That needs to be brought down. The bureaucracy has to be removed. And the You can make, if you want to make it a private hospital, you want to have some profit margin, fine, but not at this level, not in the terms of billions of dollars being taken out of our healthcare spending just as profits. So anyway, so therefore that is, that's why Medicare for All, I'm going to plug it, is something I want everyone to look up and I want everyone to question and understand. The two other questions, Steve, that I get about Medicare for All is, oh, well, what about, will I stay in network? Can I still see my physicians? Because that is
Right.
another game that insurance companies play, right? Oh, that particular dentist is out of network, so therefore the copay will be greater. Oh, you're seeing a specialist. Oh, we don't cover that particular specialist.
Yep.
So it's constantly like you actually need like a whole full-time job sometimes to worry about healthcare, because especially if you have a chronic condition, it can be really draining. So for Medicare for All, there is no question about in network or out of network. Everyone's in network. There's only one network. So that's not going to be an issue. And the third question people ask is, oh, won't I wait a long time? Because this is what we are always told in Canada. People don't receive care. And you're Canadian, so you might.
That's right. Yeah. Both of my kids go to school in Canada.
So
they're dual citizens as well. The whole thing. Oh, you bet.
Yeah. So you can actually tell me from your experience, but Canadians will tell us, wait a second, don't badmouth our health insurance system, because they'll say, if you need an emergency MRI or emergency care, you will receive it right away. We're not going to, delay the care. But if for some reason you're able to wait, then you just line up. So in the United States, and we say, oh no, if I want MRI, it doesn't matter whether it's an emergency situation or not, I'm going to get it. And so we're thinking that's the Canadian system is wrong. But let me tell you, we are waiting. We are waiting. Here in the North Country, so New Hampshire, the North, again, for listeners who are not from New Hampshire, the northern part is, it's beautiful mountains, beautiful forests, but it's more sparsely populated.
Right.
And we don't have a lot of large hospitals there, mostly. So if somebody wants to see a primary care physician, like to be under the care of a primary care physician, because there's so little healthcare providers up there, you actually have a 2-year waiting period in order to find a space in a doctor's office. Here in the Seacoast, so we are both from the Seacoast, but for people, I live in a town called Exeter, which is very close to the southern border with Massachusetts. And so we're actually a heavily populated area still. If you want to find a pediatrician in our area, it's about a 9-month waiting period. We're also short on providers here. So are we waiting in the United States? Yes, my friend. We are also lining up in the United States. So I hope that gives people a little understanding of Medicare for All. I'm sure
that last point.
Yes.
I've heard it said many times, and you sort of touched on it, that the key that allegedly no country has figured out yet is, if you think about the 3 things that every typical person wants. And by the way, this would probably be true whether it was going out to a meal or seeking healthcare services. They want it to be affordable. They want it to be high quality.
Yes.
And they want it to be quick.
Yes.
That is very human, right? I want stuff that's good, inexpensive, and immediate.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And so the argument goes, Canada, the US, and Britain have all decided that you can get 2 of them, but you cannot get all 3 of them. This is right. So in Britain, the shtick is it's covered nationally. Yeah. So okay, we got that covered, and it is not great, and it's pretty quick, but it's not great. In Canada, and I think you've dispelled some of this. It's you don't have to pay, okay, and it's high quality, but you're going to have to wait
if you can.
If you can, right, for non-emergent. And in the U.S., they're like, hey, it's great levels of care, and you don't have to wait as long, but you got to pay, which is a pretty big caveat. And so I think there is this element of, what is the system that allows us to balance these three very human, understandable desires. I want high quality at a really low price as fast as almost immediately. How do you see the balancing of those three? And you kind of touched on this a moment ago. The prioritization maybe of emergency and non-emergency elective, maybe that's somewhere in there. What's the best way to kind of balance these three very human desires in an optimal way to get the resources to folks that right now, let's face it, I mean, I've lived it in my own upbringing where the cost of healthcare when we were underinsured created a very calamitous financial situation for my family. So we've lived that experience you described earlier. It's by far the number one reason why people file personal bankruptcy in this country by a mile. And that destroys the finances of that household, of that family, sometimes for the rest of their life.
Yes.
I mean, and I tell folks, I had a series of massive heart attacks. The third one was a massive one, a little over 2 years ago. And we have had and have health insurance that covered the lion's share of the cost. And thus it was not a scary part of dealing with it. But I had to drive into the ER with what I realized in hindsight was obviously a really life-threatening situation. If I did not have insurance, I know I would have been far more hesitant to drive to the ER and get it checked out. And they said if you hadn't gone in, you would have been dead in a couple hours because the levels were going up. And it would have been the fourth heart attack, and they were getting worse every time. And I know that for millions of Americans, they are thinking, I know I probably need to do this, but I can't afford it. And that hesitation in a moment like that is quite literally life and death. So how do we balance the affordability, the immediacy, and obviously the quality in a way that can get what probably will require a supermajority of legislators to eventually feel the pressure from the public to say, you are electorally in trouble if you don't do this. Because right now, maybe it's the big money in the politics, but right now we don't have enough elected officials who are feeling the heat of inaction.
Yes.
The way that they are fearful of action.
Yes. So you made a couple points. Can I go back to?
Of course.
So
of course.
You did bring up England. So United Kingdom. So the United Kingdom, one of the reasons they have issues is they are not funding it. So even if you implement Medicare for all, if you don't put in money, you're still going to have a system that's not working. So when I'm talking about that $4.3 trillion system, I'm still hoping that just passing the piece of legislation is not enough. You also have to fund the program. So in case of England, the reason their healthcare system is not as great is because they're not funding it. They're not receiving adequate funding. They're spending way too much money on NATO and bombing other people, but we'll get into that in a second, instead of actually taking care of their own citizens. So that's one thing. In the United States, okay, you say people want care immediately. I'm sorry, but we just talked about the fact that 50,000 Americans die. So there are people that are waiting until they just die. People are having cardiovascular problems, and they get worse. You talked about an acute issue. Heart attack is an acute issue. We're talking about minutes to hours that it's going to be something you need to take care of right away. But there are other issues like, say, cardiovascular problems or cancer, where you may not be talking about minutes or hours, but you're still talking weeks and months that it has to be taken care of. And the earlier intervention has a higher chance of being cheaper and have a better outcome. So you want that earlier intervention. And what does that early intervention mean? That you actually have annual checkups, because then a primary care physician can figure out maybe there's something going on with you and I want you to see a specialist. Because a lot of folks might have issues and they're like, I can't afford it. Like, I get headaches. And maybe they don't even understand that they have high blood pressure. They just think I get headaches all the time. Well, and with a high blood pressure that is not controlled, it's actually causing a lot of damage to your body. So by the time you finally collapse, someone takes you to the ER, and now things have gotten worse. So primary care, a healthy society should give a lot of access to their citizens to primary care physicians. And we should actually spend a lot of our money in primary care. So here in New Hampshire, about 6% of our spending is in primary care. 6%. That is not healthy. We should be spending about 20%. And what that means is, if you think about the percentage, it basically means we are spending a lot of money on later term care, or when it's gotten really bad. And we're talking about end of life care. What if we could just move that model a little bit, give people access to the care earlier? It'll be cheaper for us as a society. It'll have a better patient outcome. So that is a model that we actually should adhere to. So, but there's also a shortage of primary care physicians across the country. Why? Because, and this is going off a little bit of healthcare, but it's part of the problem.
Yep.
Or tangentially, it's part of the problem. So we all know that going to medical school is very expensive. So by the time someone comes out, 4 years of bachelor's degree, 4 years of medical school, 1 year of internship, years of residency, we're talking about maybe $500,000 or more in debt, right? So a lot of folks say, well, do I want to be a pediatrician or a family physician? Because what is the earnings? 180,000, maybe 200,000. How am I going to pay off all this loan, right? So then they instead go into specializing, becoming a surgeon or more specialized care. So we are actually also, in a sense, the financial model is forcing people to reconsider going into primary care. So we should, as a nation, encourage our young students and medical students to consider primary care or pediatric care as their focus. So we actually have to help them with taking off some of that the costs. And also, maybe we should also consider, why is medical school so expensive? Why is medical school so expensive? Somebody who goes into medicine, a lot of times, why are they going into it? Because they care about people. They want to provide. They want to see patients. They want to care for patients. They're interested. These are kind, compassionate people. We should not make them go into debt seeking this wonderful profession. I mean, some of these residents and or young physicians, they will not be able to purchase a house until their 40s because they have such a huge amount of debt. So that's also an issue that we should one day talk about. But I guess we're kind of sidetracking. But that leads to two things. People don't have health insurance, so they're not seeing the primary care physicians, but we have a shortage of primary care physicians. So we are not able to provide that care. Like I said, the northern part of New Hampshire, you wait 2 years to see if you want to be under the care of a primary care physician because there's such a shortage. Okay, I'm going off.
No, that's okay. But look, it's a huge issue. It does, as you noted, it gets into the way that we fund or higher education, or in some cases don't. I mean, there are certainly, in my years of being a candidate, there are what I've said a lot of there are surprisingly progressive policies in terms of the attractiveness across the ideological spectrum, as long as they can be connected to the values of folks that maybe are not the highest engagement Democratic, who these days tend to be higher education, higher income, and generally more progressive. But that's about 30%. And the other 70% often find certain things like real accessibility and affordability of healthcare as a dominant concern in their lives. But they have fears, often created from decades of hearing about problems that they see as intractable, and thus, hey, it's what I have. It may not be perfect, but I'm afraid of the alternative to my imperfect, employer-based insurance. One of the things I found, for example, is if you look at the values of people on the center right of the ideological spectrum, they find independence and entrepreneurship as two driving values, particularly people that start their own business. They see and rightfully, right? It's very scary and hard to do. So when you are an entrepreneur, you are taking that risk and you're doing something big and bold, and it's awesome. And however, I'd argue the number one impediment to striking out on your own and starting a business is our employer-based system of health insurance.
Exactly.
It is tethering people to specific jobs in specific established companies well after the free market would say, hey, you've got a great idea. Go out there and strike it out on your own. And they go, I can't afford, it's risky enough to get a business loan to start the business. Now you add, I'm married, I got a couple of kids, I got to deal with insurance. I don't have an answer to that. The risk gets too high and it squashes entrepreneurship, which is where most net new job creation in the country comes from. I would argue some form of health insurance system akin to what you're describing is actually the most pro-entrepreneur policy that we could do as a country. Suddenly we're talking in the values and the language often associated with the center right of the spectrum, but not with blurry, mushy moderation, but instead with bold, progressive policy that once you lay out the numbers, maybe it's not quite as bold. Right? It's not as scary, but you have to make the case. And I think there is a spot for folks with a professional background that has this quantitative, create the hypothesis, test the hypothesis, see what the outcomes are, measure, review. There's a thought process there that can build a credibility that is sitting there for either party. It's sitting there for Democrats through the prism of values that we often associate with the center right. But there's no reason why entrepreneurism should be a Republican value. There's no reason for that. And yet right now, when you look at polling and so forth, people generally see the Republican Party as the more pro-entrepreneur party, even as they tend to be the more resistant to the change in the way we do insurance in this company. That is the number one impediment to entrepreneurship itself. So I think it's sitting there for us, and healthcare is a tremendous opportunity for that.
So I'm going to keep an eye on the clock because I do want to answer that question, but you let me know, right, if we're running out of time.
Oh, sure. Yeah. We probably got another 15 minutes or so. And by the way, maybe we're going to have you back. I'm going to have to title this the healthcare.
This is part one, Steve.
Part one. But the healthcare, I mean, this
we
is
only
a
covering
top-tier
one
issue.
Yes, because there's a lot to cover.
Oh, I mean, I do want to take at least a few minutes, and it's not I don't want to give it any shorter shrift than it will get, but a little bit about foreign policy. Yes. I know you've been very passionate, particularly Israel, Gaza, but elsewhere, as well as housing policy, which in my experience, both at the state and federal level, it's a top 3 issue right now. People want to hear about practical solutions, and on your website, you got some pretty specific stuff about it.
So, okay, Steve, really, this has to be part one because we have to have this conversation again. But I want to talk a little bit about employment-based health insurance. Okay, so just to give you an idea, because a lot of folks don't realize this. Okay, so we didn't always have an employment-based health insurance. It started post Second World War because a lot of companies were trying to entice employees. We were going through an economic boom and they were like, no, come to our company. And here we will even help you with getting extra care. Because at the time, I think we were trying to look at a not-for-profit model. The Blue Cross Blue Shield back then was a not-for-profit model. But they were like, look, if you come to our company, we'll give you extra medical insurance, et cetera. So anyways, so going back, but right now, what do we have? A lot of folks receive their health insurance from their employer. When you get sick and you need that health insurance, well, you can't work either. You can't work and now you've lost your insurance. Wow, what a horrible model, right? Okay. But let's look at it for a second from the employer's perspective. I've spoken to many employers who are drowning in the cost of the premiums. It is skyrocketing. I've spoken to employers who don't have enough money to hire additional employees, even though they have the work to hire additional employees, because an additional employee means also on top of their salary, there's that premium that they have to pay on their health insurance, and they just can't afford it. So this is for anyone who is business friendly. You should actually think about that, what we're doing to business owners. And then I don't know about other states, but at least here in New Hampshire, up to 12 employees, the first 12 employees, a small business owner does not have to provide health insurance. Starting from the 13th employee onwards, you have to provide health insurance. So the golden number is 12.
Which, what a ceiling.
What a ceiling. You are basically telling people you cannot grow, because the 13th or the 14th employee, suddenly now they have to pay everyone health insurance. And
everybody.
Yes. So I've spoken to salon owners. They're like, no, I cannot. I have to cap it to 12. Even though I have enough business to be able to hire a few more, I can't. Because if I do, then I have to provide everyone with health insurance. So any business-friendly person, Republican, red, blue, whatever color you are, think about it, what we are doing to business owners. So this is one thing I want to say. And next year, the premiums are going up even more. Another problem with this employment-based health insurance is that if an employee is sick, like they had cancer or they needed intensive care treatment in a given year, the premiums for the next year go up, not because the market is going up, which also is, okay, we're going to talk about the horrific for-profit model first. Let's move that aside. They're going to be actually penalized. The employer is going to be penalized because your employees needed more care than average in a given year. So sorry, your premiums are going to go up. So what does that employer do then? He's looking at his employees not with the kindness and compassion, thinking, oh my God, you're sick, you're going to cause me additional burden next year. Another thing that happens from the employer's perspective, they are hesitant to employ people who are in their 50s or 60s. Someone who might be, coming with the wisdom and experience and education. And you would think, oh, this is going to be a perfect employee. I don't have to train that person. That person has so much wealth of knowledge that they can bring to our company. But as we get older, we might also have health problems. And from an employer's perspective, oh no, you might actually increase the premium that I have to pay. So a lot of employers are hesitant to employ people in their 50s and 60s. So yes, from a business perspective, it's a really bad system.
And I think we need to lean, I say we as Democrats, fellow Democrat, we need to lean in on that part of the message, I think. Like, look, is there a compassionate part? Look, I'm not a terribly religious person in day to day, but I was, as a French Canadian from the west side of Manchester, by law, I was required to be Catholic. And my favorite part of the Catholic faith is the social justice element in its traditions that says you're only as fast as the slowest rower in the boat. You're only as strong as the weakest member of your team. And so we measure the goodness of a society or a community by how we treat those that are in the most vulnerable position. I think that's a beautiful way of looking at it. And is there any place where vulnerability becomes more tangible than in the way we help those that are sick or that are at greatest risk of being sick? And so there is this empathetic element, and that's important. And I think it's part of how we can talk to the faith-based community, who often we struggle with these days in politics. There's an element there, but we are the pro-business party, actually, but not just the pro-big business, the pro-biggest corporations. It's the little guy. It's the little woman who's starting and has the handful of employees. It is that moment when you are like, I'm at 10 or 12 employees. What an exciting opportunity to grow further, right? That's the local business that we all want more of. And in a number of ways that may have originally been unintended, but as we have spackled together this 80-year-old employer-based system at a time when insurance was cheap, and so they said, yeah, what the hell, yeah, sure, yeah, I'll throw some in, and we're competing. It has changed so much, but the system hasn't changed, and we pay heavily in so many ways.
Mhm.
I have to ask you, I realize it's topical, and this may be for part 4. But
We'll have
but
a Steve and Karishma show. How's that?
actually, we have a new podcast. How about that? The recent vote in the Senate, or decision, the deal, obviously super hot stuff in my own work at different local events. That's been hot stuff. It's the number one thing. I'm focused on state and local mainly these days, but that's the number one thing people want to talk about. I imagine you have thoughts.
Oh, I have thoughts. What are we calling it? The big cave?
Well, apparently, you have begun expressing your thoughts. So continue. I mean, my big question, let me frame it this way, just because in the interest of time, is
I know we're running out of time.
How much of the problem was in the formation of the original plan, the original strategy?
So
where was this going to go? Like if this had gone 2 more weeks or 4 more weeks, like when this started, what was the thought? I still haven't heard a really good answer to that.
Right. So first of all, Donald Trump, my God, that has to be, what series, should that be episode 2? Because that 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, wow, there's a lot of material there. My God, this man is not interested in democratic governance. This presidency is so, he's taking a wrecking ball to everything. Okay, so the GOP has the Senate, the House, and the White House. So this shutdown was on them. They were not interested in compromising. They were fine with being cruel and making life difficult for Americans. So let's start with that. However, from the Democratic perspective, so at the start of the shutdown, you are making a demand and you're saying if you don't adhere to this, if you don't increase the subsidies for another year, a year or 2, whatever their demand was at the very beginning, we will not sign on to the CR. If you're making that decision, then stick to that decision.
I mean, that's the thing. Like at the moment,
yes. What was
at the moment that you decide that's the hill you're going to die on?
Yeah, you've signed on to that hill.
Then the only argument I could see is, well, at the beginning, we thought there was a chance because of the cruelty of it all that even the current administration would come to the table at some point because of the pain. And then if nothing else, what it would do to air traffic control as we entered the holiday season.
It became more and more complicated. And we should absolutely preface this by saying that the cruelty towards people, so many federal workers were furloughed, so many federal workers were laid off, the SNAP benefits, the cruelty on again, off again, like the uncertainties, people like the air traffic controllers not getting paid and still having to come to work. There was so much chaos and confusion and dysfunction, and absolutely we should be concerned because it's terrible, right? Why do we even get to the shutdown stage? Because a government that's functional should be able to negotiate, right? And at the end of the day, you should also be negotiating what is best for the American people, not what is best for Donald Trump or some other senator or representative. You should be asking what is best for the American people. And if it's failing at the executive level or in Congress, we should absolutely be concerned. So, but for a second, let's see. So yes, that's the hill you're going to die on. So stick with that hill, right? And the other thing was at the very beginning, the airwaves were filled with Donald Trump's rhetoric that it's a democratic shutdown. And, Mike Johnson, and I'm going to hold off on choice words and just say Speaker Mike Johnson. This is a family-friendly show, after all.
Family-friendly show. The kids could click on this on Spotify or something. You never know.
I didn't say anything. I will say
that's right,
Steve. After we turn it off,
you got the PG here. Yeah.
Every single day he would go on. This is the day 5 of the Democratic government shutdown, and then they were blasting all these little pop-ups boxes across the country and on various government websites. But by the time 30 days are going by, 40 days, the people are like, wait a second. This is Donald Trump's fault. This is the GOP's fault. Why are they being so cruel when people need food and healthcare? And at that moment, to give up was a strategic blunder. And so from Chuck Schumer's perspective, so either he made backroom deals with 7 Democratic senators and 1 independent who caucuses with the Democrats, and he knew what was going on, and he allowed them to make this deal, or he couldn't keep his Democratic caucus together. Either way, it's a sign of lack of leadership. And so I actually think he should definitely step down.
Well, and it certainly puts him in a politically vulnerable position, one would think, for his own reelection, should he run again in a couple of years.
Is he still planning to run again?
Well, you know what? There's obviously time where he may decide, look, the math is the math. And I have seen it at the local level, the state, and the federal level. It is always tough to watch somebody who's been around for a long time and doesn't get the memo.
Yeah.
And basically political forces end up getting them off the stage rather than them voluntarily choosing to walk off the stage. We see that all the time in both parties, the whole ideological spectrum. And I think the specter of an AOC running for U.S. Senate, which of course is all speculation at this point, in a primary against Chuck Schumer strikes me as that's a very vulnerable position for Senator Schumer to be in. A lot of time, though, between now and then, and he may end up not running again anyway. But clearly it has created quite a rancor, certainly in the Democratic base, as I've seen it in the couple of weeks, week and a half or so since then. And I don't think, and I do worry at the end of January, when the current CR is set to expire, what happens then?
Right. Right. But going back to Chuck Schumer.
Yeah.
Again, I'll keep it PG, but
sure.
I don't want us to wait for his term to be over. We need leadership now. We are talking about Donald Trump. This man is about to go into Venezuela. This man is about to, God knows, he keeps threatening every other country, except for many other countries that are really horrible countries and they're dictators. And then suddenly those are his friends. Okay, whatever. But we need leadership now and opposition to this wrecking ball. So I'm actually not interested whether Chuck Schumer is going to run again or not run again. At this moment, we need a strong leader in the Senate. Because what is our job as an opposition party? To protect the Americans, to protect our democracy. And if it's not happening, I thank you for your service. It's not a vanity project.
Yep.
Please step aside. And that's my position. Okay. But there was so much more. Oh my God. Did we?
We got a few more minutes now.
Foreign policy. We didn't even touch on foreign policy.
If you want to do that, let's do that for a moment. And again, this is not meant to be end all be all. It's a long campaign cycle. You know that. We were talking before we went on air.
Yes.
Anybody who runs for office has my respect right out of the chute as somebody who's done it. And it's just it's a tremendous amount of work that you're putting in. And obviously one of the issues that I'm sure that listening to you, foreign policy, in some ways it seemed like at the beginning, what's going on in Gaza it seems like one of the animating factors and the larger issue of human rights and so forth. Is it fair to say that's one of the animating factors that got you into the ring, to the next level of actually running for a statewide office?
So there are about 1,000 reasons why I'm running. It's one of the reasons. So minimum wage, what happened in 2021 was a reason. And yes, you might say, well, why didn't you run back then? Because it was percolating. It was just like, I was still working within the systems. Many of us were still working within the system. We had a certain number of elected officials who were representing us, and we were going to them to ask them to understand what our requests were, what our needs were, how to help the people in the state, in our state, as well as across the nation. So we were not trying to break down the system or challenge it. We were trying to work within the system. It was years of frustration within the system to realize it was not enough to vote for any Democrat. We had to vote for the right Democrat. So How, like I said, Medicare for all, that was one of the reasons. The fact that minimum wage is stuck at 7.25 is one of the reasons. One of the reasons is, okay, we talked a lot about SNAP recently, and I'm sorry, I will promise that we'll get to foreign policy. But there was a lot of discussion about the SNAP benefits over the last few weeks, right? So some 45 million Americans receive SNAP benefits, right? Steve, some of these people have jobs. Why are they food insecure? So first, let's move back and ask, why in the richest country in the world are 45 million people even food insecure? Why? So this is question number one. And who are these people? Many of them have jobs. Why are they food insecure? Because they work at Walmart, they work at McDonald's. Those multi-billion-dollar companies are giving starvation wages to their employees. Therefore,
Right. We are all subsidizing
we are
that,
all
aren't we?
subsidizing. Yes, Steve, that's right. Walton family owns Walmart, or at least it's their biggest shareholder. They're billionaires. And so our level of people with some income are helping the really poor people so that the really rich people can get even richer. Like there's something structurally wrong with that system. And so we should not only help those people who are food insecure, we should also ask, why are they food insecure, and then try to fix it. And one of the ways we could fix it is by increasing the minimum wage. Because the minimum wage...
I do think this gets at the frustration that is causing Americans to kind of pinball from party to party, oh my God, financial crisis. Let's give Barack Obama a chance.
Yes.
Oh my God, the recovery's been so slow. I'll give Donald Trump a chance.
Yes.
Wow, Donald Trump's a lot. I'll go with Biden. I'll give Biden a shot. Whoa, it's not getting better fast enough.
Yes.
I'll try Trump again.
Band-Aids. Who has the bigger Band-Aid box? Yes.
Right?
First aid kits. Yes.
I mean, and
the
so
patient is dying. Band-Aids are not going to help right now.
Band-Aids are not going to help get huge wounds. Yes. And it means that I think this is not over yet. And it is what I worry about is in 2026, Democrats might have a really good night. I think there's a lot of signs that Democrats are going to have a great night politically, and that then Democrats will say, hey, it's all good. We solved the problems. And not really. No. And then you get to 2028, which is a different electorate. It's a much bigger electorate. And if we are not seen as having addressed underlying issues with more than Band-Aid solutions, then the vulnerability of this careening back to a J.D. Vance or whatever is sitting there on a tee. So there's a lot of exciting outcomes, and there's some very scary outcomes. And that broad range of outcomes, anybody who questions how broad the potential outcomes are, it's wider than our imagination, because who could have imagined in 2002 that a guy named Barack Hussein Obama would be elected president with a clean majority, and then 8 years later, Donald Trump would get elected president and then lose and then win again. Right. Unimaginable. So these are crazy times politically that I think represent near desperation for leadership and tangible solutions by a surprisingly wide and bipartisan swath of the electorate.
Steve, I need to talk about something else now. I'm sorry, but I have to. Can we table foreign policy?
You know what? We'll have to bring you back and do foreign policy, which deserves its own full discussion.
Because I need to say something about what you just said.
Sure.
Okay. I want people to remember that the Democratic Party is the party that gave us Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, unemployment insurance, the 8-hour workday, strong child labor laws, FEMA, EPA. Wait, I'm going to just keep. We put people on the moon. Kennedy.
Yep.
Second World War was won under FDR. Hey, we won that war. Let's see. FDR brought us out of the first Great Recession. Barack Obama brought us out of the second recession. And Biden saved us from Trump's last recession. So, and then what else? There's so much more. Come on, Steve, help me out.
That's the
healthcare subsidies with, ACA. I mean, right? When Speaker Mike Johnson, the PG version, when he goes on television and attacks ACA and calls it the Unaffordable Care Act, what have you offered us?
Yeah, what's the alternative?
Yes, Speaker Johnson, what have you ever offered us? You criticize ACA, you criticize all these the SNAP benefits, etc. But what are you offering us in return? Nothing. Where's this great healthcare plan that you have presented? I don't see anything but just criticism and mean words and what was the concept of a plan? I mean, Donald Trump ran on when he ran in 2016, he kept talking about the fact that he was going to provide us with a healthcare plan. Every single year was a infrastructure week or the healthcare week. Do you remember?
Yep. Oh, yeah. And
Nothing,
look, in those first 2 years, in 17 and 18, they had the ability to get things done.
How many infrastructure weeks did we have where there was no infrastructure plan?
No infrastructure.
Nothing. It was just all marketing BS. Again, PG version. And Mike Johnson, how dare you go on national television and attack Democrats and attack ACA? What alternative do you have? People are dying in the United States. 50,000 Americans are dying each year. What are you offering us in return? Nothing.
I think you're right, Karishma, that it's important for Democrats to remind the American people that we have a long and rich history through much of the 20th century of doing big things that, by the way, once they are integrated into American society, are generally among the most popular programs. Try touching Social Security. Try touching Medicare. Look at the polling even on Medicaid. Look at Obamacare, which was hung around the Democrats' neck in 2010, now has a decade of majority support for Obamacare. It is no longer a slur to say Obamacare the way that Republicans thought it was going to be. At every turn, we have done a better job of seeing big problems and trying to identify big solutions. And the American people have generally said, after some nervousness at the beginning, when we plow through the difficult initial political times and get to the other side, the American people have generally said, yep, I like that. I like that a lot better than before.
Exactly. And so I want us to go back, remind ourselves our roots, remind ourselves of all these successes. And I want us to understand, why have we become such an unpopular party? Because first of all, when I talk to the base, I'm a Democrat. Sure. We're all Democrats. When we talk about the base, we still have these vision of these bold legislation. But then when we look at the leadership, they've become these neoliberal moderate Democrats who are more worried about keeping their donors happy and bringing in millions of dollars to get reelected than to actually come up with bold legislation, because some of their donors are the ones who don't want that bold legislation. Some of their donors might be that for-profit health insurance CEO or the for-profit hospital CEO. And so we have to say, no, we have to go back to our roots. We have to be like, there is a problem. Here's our solution. And we're going to fight like hell to pass that solution, even if at the cost of not getting reelected, because that is what public service should be about. It should not be about, I just want to get reelected again and again and again. And
ultimately, it's what gets you reelected is admittedly, it may not be the first wave, but now it is fighting for the subsidies in Obamacare and ACA. That's the popular position now. Now we gave up on that in this negotiation, in part because I think we did not think through at the beginning what would happen if Trump and Republicans just said, hey, people aren't going to get to eat. What are you going to do? And how do you negotiate with somebody like that? So that's a different conversation about the tactics and the strategies and how kind of sour that ended up. But the fact that we could be fighting for the ACA, if you had told somebody in 2010, 15 years from now, by fighting for the subsidies in the ACA, you will become more popular politically because the American people want it. and appreciate its presence. That would have been unimaginable 15, 16 years ago when a lot of, frankly, there was some Democrats running away from it in 2010. And now they generally run towards it. And I think that's a lesson, just like Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid and infrastructure investments and so forth. And so it is a different way of looking at how do we become more popular as a party. Is it going to be by blurring the differences, or is it going to be by being bold and exhibiting the difference? And the difference is one party looks to solve the problems and the other not so much.
And Steve, the best way is listen to the people. Go listen to the people. Why are people in my town sleeping in their cars? Why are people in my town sleeping in tents? And if I talk to them, they say, Karishma, I'm not a drug addict. I have a job. I just can't afford housing.
Yeah.
Which goes, okay, we're not going to touch housing. We're not going to touch foreign policy because we're running out of time. But listen to the people. Don't think about marketing. Don't think about your consultant and think about your PowerPoint presentation and your statements. Go ask the people, what do you need? Because I'm a firm believer that the government should work to help people. And a measure of a society, I'm quoting someone, I don't know who, but a measure of a society is how we treat the most vulnerable. And in that way, we are failing as a society. So anyways, should we...
You know what? This seems like
way over an hour.
We've gone way over, and we didn't even get to foreign policy. We didn't get to housing.
Yes,
we'll get to it.
We'll get to it,
and we'll do it again. And I know you have an event this evening. You got something every night, right? So we will do that again. Yes. But Karishma Manzur, tell the folks again one more time how they can find you.
So the website is karishmaforsenate.com, and we are also on social media. So the handle is Karishma for Senate, and I think on X it's Karishma, the number 4 Senate. But don't go to X. X is so vicious.
Not a nice place.
The nasty people are out there. I would love to take down that account because the meanness.
But there are people there are people that you got to reach there. So I appreciate that.
But
it is what it is.
Cesspool that X has become, I swear.
It's not so good. Well, that's great. And of course, you're out and about. You're out in the hustings all the time, campaigning on a regular basis.
Love it.
To find out where you're going to be.
Yes, that's the best
How do people find where you're going to be? On the website?
So we did start a Mobilize account. Again, we're grassroots. We don't have what we're doing is we're just putting in the events in Mobilize. We are sometimes a little late putting it up, but that's one way to check. But also host a fundraiser for me, or host a meet and greet for me, or host a town hall. Oh, and we're doing a town hall in Manchester on December 16th. I'll plug at that. But we'll have more information because that's going to be our socioeconomic package. And Steve, I would love to talk to you about it. Because this is a people's campaign. I want to hear from people before I put forth, because it has to make sense what we need for people to make their lives a little bit better. So we're going to cover several aspects of the socioeconomic problems and solutions to those problems. So.
Wow. Okay. Well, to be continued. Karishma, thank you so much. Good luck to you and much safety and success on the trail.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you all for listening or watching. You can catch this. You can catch my stuff on Substack at stevemarchand.com. We will be posting this there as well. You'll be able to find it at stevemarchand.com. You can also find this podcast, if you didn't find it already to get to here today, on Spotify or on Apple Podcast at the Steve Marchand Podcast. Lots of ways to do it. Thanks again for listening. Look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks again, Karishma. See you all soon, folks.